I know my why, I aim for growth, and I take ownership over my journey. If I am truly committed to grow, and if everything I do is through that lens and that filter, I can look back and maybe in the moment it's a little bit dirty, and I can be grateful for what I've experienced because it shaped me to who I am today. And I can look at the struggles that I've had as a teenager, the struggles that I've had as a young man, the struggles that I have now as a dad and as a husband, as a friend, as a mentor, as a leader. I can look at all these struggles as a tool that says, hey, I'm going through this so someone else doesn't have to, because I can then speak into their life and just share a little perspective. And hopefully in some way I can inspire them. It's easy for me to say in reverse hindsight 2020 that, yeah, it's all good, but it wasn't good in the time. I'm not going to lie to you. There's lots of ups and downs, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. Looking back, I can also see there was a purpose here. There's a greater calling here. And if I truly believe that, I can't be bitter. I can't be disappointed in what I've experienced.
Cam, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Man, Frank, thanks for having me, brother. I am jacked up to be here right now. You know, when you reached out, I was like, this is a no-brainer. You know, what you've done, the way you're impacting the lives of men and their struggle with pornography, and the work that you've done out there in the space that's really made such a positive impact and influence in the lives of others, man. I am honored to be here. It truly is a pleasure.
Well, I appreciate that, brother. And obviously, you know, I think the work that you're doing as well, both with Fight the Dad Bod and with Dads Making a Difference, hits home as well. You know, obviously our audience being men, we have a good bit of those that are already fathers and those that aren't, just like myself, dream to have that into our life one day as well. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into you, everything that you've been doing. And I'm jacked up as well. It may be a carryover from that pre-workout that I had a couple hours ago. So if I'm a little amped up and ready, that's why we're bringing the fire here today.
Excellent.
Yeah. So dad bods, man, it's a polarizing topic, right? You know, it's like kind of depending on where you fall on, you know, the side of, you know, right, left, whatever, you know, it kind of just seems like people are going to kind of get maybe angry or upset, or they're going to be in full support of it. And it is a conversation we've addressed here a handful of times, never specifically with somebody that's got a company and a coaching business that's called Fight the Dad Bod. So I think where I'd love to start here today, Cam, is what is a dad bod? Like, how do we define this?
Yeah.
And in your opinion, why is it something you think we need to be fighting?
Oh man, I love that question because, you know, when I started Fight the Dad Bod, I'd love to share the story of that in a moment if I could.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I think it would point to my reasoning and my definition of what it is. And I think at first I was like, yeah, the dad bod is this body where a guy wants to be fit, but he's maybe a little soft in the midsection. And that's like the outward aesthetic piece of the term dad bod that we think of. But I really started to experience things in my own life that got me thinking about the dad bod as a persona, the dad bod as not only the physical form, but the mental form, the emotional form, the spiritual form, and how guys were struggling in so many areas and how the outward appearance was just one indicator of how men were suffering right now. And yeah, I can share a little bit of how this happened. You know, I'm a ex-collegiate athlete. I played, you know, college basketball, and it was such an awesome experience for me. And I'd always been really, I would call addicted to fitness. I was addicted to fitness. I was addicted to this aesthetic. I was addicted to performance. And I finished my eligibility like every athlete does in their early 20s and went on to struggle with identifying who I was as a young man. I still say, you know, 20s to 30s as a young man. You can tell how old I am now by saying that. But as a young man, who I was. And people always thought of me as Cam the fit guy. And I was like, I have to be that. I have to be that guy. I have to be shredded all the time. You know, I have to walk around. I'm 6'5", just a little over. And I got to be like 6'5", 230 shredded. That's what I need to be. And I did everything I could to do that. I deprived my body of the fuel that it needed. I ate these anabolic diets that a bodybuilder would use going on stage. I'd never been on stage. I was just following these plans so I could look a certain way because I was like, oh, I'm heading to the beach. I'm 26 years old. I want to head to the beach and look really good. The byproduct of this was I developed a really unhealthy relationship with food, really unhealthy, to the point all I was eating was chicken, rice, carrots, maybe a little broccoli once in a while. And I say that and people are like, oh, no, that wasn't. No, it seriously was. And if you don't believe me, reach out to my wife and she'll tell you, because we were dating at the time and she's like, you need to stop this. You're angry. We said hangry, but you're always hungry. You're angry. You're irritable. Like something's got to change here. And Kim and I had been dating for about 3-4 years at that point. And yeah, I needed to change. I was unhealthy. And so fast forward a little bit, Kim and I get married, thank goodness. And, you know, God blessed me with a beautiful, amazing woman in my life that helped turn me around in multiple areas, and this was one of them. And said, we got to get you right. And so my wife was just also an ex-athlete, not addicted to fitness, but doing it in a healthy way, and challenged me to, improve my relationship with food. And so I found a mentor. I got coaching. I got this man named Mark McDonald who stepped into my life and said, "Man, we got to get you straight here. You're a young dad now. You got at that point, my daughter Maya was born in 2012, and after she was born, I was a first time parent. And for all the guys out there who might be, expecting or are hoping to be expecting in the next while, that ex-collegiate athlete was addicted to fitness, whose wife was also fit and we're going to the gym 5-6 times a week. And it was, oh no, it'll be all good. We'll just like the baby will come in and they'll just fit into our lifestyle. Man, that could not be any more from the truth. Like everything changed. Less sleep, more stress, this unknowing of what to expect. And it led to, grab and go fast food meals, and stress causes, we know stress rising cortisol levels affects body weight. And for a guy with a negative relationship with food, with a guy with a really poor, if you haven't figured out by now, I had a really poor self-image problem and a self-identity problem of who I really was. And I struggled. And the 8 months after Maya was born, I put on 25 unhealthy pounds. And I went into, I wouldn't say depression because I know people who are clinically depressed, and I don't want to stigmatize that. I think that's a really important thing to address. But I felt that way. I was a low spot, man. I was in a really low spot. I was a professional. I was an assistant principal at elementary school. Struggling in my marriage, struggling to be a brand new dad, struggling to balance my health. And yeah, man, I did everything I could again to lose that weight. And I struggled. I wasn't sleeping. I started starving myself just to get this aesthetic again. And those things that I used to do, deprive my body of the fuel it needs, fast, not eat for long periods of time and not in a healthy way. Like we know people do different plans right now, but I was doing it unhealthy. And I managed to lose the weight until Braylon, my son, was born in 2014. And after he was born, Bray came along. I'm a dad of two, these amazing gifts from God. And I just didn't have the energy to be there for them. At that point, still an administrator, elementary school, finishing my master's degree, newborn, 2-year-old, struggling with my health, another low spot. And that's when I actually met Mark. It was 2015, and he taught me how to fuel my body right. And so I did. And over the next 8 months, transformed my body, started having more energy, felt more present. I could be the dad I wanted to be. I felt that there was a higher level of intimacy with my wife. I had a better emotion, more spiritual health. And I was like, man, I got to teach other guys to do this. And this is the ironic part about this. And stop me if I'm rambling, interject anytime, but I love basketball. And so I was playing in a men's league. And it was about this time that the ironic part, I was in a bar having a beer and nachos with the guys after a men's league game. And one of my buddies who I played college with back in the day, he's like, well, I'm just going to give in to the dad bod, and kind of pats his gut. And I'm like, man, F the dad bod. And I was like, wait a second, dad bod, that's catchy. But I didn't want to be offensive. In that moment in the bar, after a couple of beers, I was offensive, but I didn't want to be offensive. So I went home and my brain just started spinning. I was like, well, fight the dad bod. And so I went out, like all the Instagram, like social media accounts at the time, the domains, everything, fight the dad bod, fight the dad bod. I didn't really know what it was going to be. So I started branding shirts that were hashtag F the dad bod on them and sending them out to all my friends, and just started sharing stories about how, as a dad of 2 young kids, we were able to do this, live this way, eat this way, feel better. And that's where Fight the Dad Bod was born. And it was more out of a feeling. I'm very conscious of not body shaming people because of the unhealthy relationship I had with food and also the self-image issues that I had. So, man, that's kind of the story of it. I feel like I rambled, Frank. Like you
No,
can
brother,
just
that's all good, man. That gave us a lot that we can kind of chew on here for the next 50 minutes or so. I mean, I resonate a lot with the identity of an athlete. As a bodybuilder, I definitely gave myself body dysmorphia through my 20s, and it's still things that I'm kind of unpacking and working through here as I'm going to be turning 40 later this year. And it's like, damn, like all that work, like I look back, and these are definitely things I want to get your opinion on, but I want to circle back here because what I ultimately heard you say is the dad bod, the physique part is just a small portion of an identity that a man begins
Absolutely.
to hold to, correct? Like that's kind of what
Correct.
you were getting to is like this dad bod becomes more of this negative identity that we almost accept with ourselves. So if the body is just one part of what the identity of a dad bod is, what are some of the internal pieces that are paired with that?
Yeah, when I think internal, I think of mental health as well. So when
Okay.
we look at the body part of this, so and this was a growth process for me. Like I am committed to growing and learning from other people. I love interactions like we're having here and picking up from the men that I get to interact with. When I started Fight the Dad Bod, it was just like the story thing, and people reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you coach people?" And I was like, "No, no, I don't." And I was like, "Well, wait a second, I could. Like if I'm called to do this, I'm called to do this." And so I started helping guys in their lives. Lots of now I've had thousands of conversations with men one on one, and they came in for the aesthetic. They came in for the weight loss. They came in for the belly, I want bigger arms, like whatever it is. Like they came in for that. But in our one to one conversations, I started to realize guys were struggling. They were struggling with the health issues like sleep, exercise, nutrition, water, vitamins and minerals, that type of stuff, that the five pillars, which we focus on. But they began to express to me how they were really struggling through, man, I don't feel like I'm present with my wife right now. Man, I get home from work. I just want energy to cut the grass. I want to be able to do stuff around the house when I get home from work. My son is 9 years. I have an 8-year-old son right now. I was telling you just before, like I just body slammed him on the bed for a little while, having a little wrestle session. But guys want to do that. They want to be present. They want to get down on their knees on the floor and play Lego and cars. And when you get to the end of a long day, they just didn't have the energy and they felt they were letting their families down. And when you feel like you're letting people down, because guys are, I'm all in or nothing, I got to be this guy. And we have these images in our head we aspire to. When we aren't measuring up in our own minds, it impacts our health, our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health. We start to distance ourselves from God, start to distance ourselves from our friends, from our spouses. We dive into other vices and things that we're struggling with, right? And so that's what I began to see is just this picture of what fighting the dad bod, quote unquote, really meant.
No, that's great, man. Circling back to your story here a little bit, I'm curious if you'd be open with sharing. I mean, you mentioned, 6'5", stud of a guy, athlete, probably dunking, right? Just kind of jumping out of the gym. Great looking guy. I mean, chisel jaw. Like, I mean, hopefully you guys can see the video here. Like, I thought Frank Rich was handsome. I'm looking at Cam, just incredible, and just strong, right? Where did some of that insecurity, where's that rooted for you?
Not knowing where I belong, not knowing where I belonged.
Expand on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, man. Growing up, grew up in a larger center until I was about 12, 13 years old. Grew up in a place called Calgary, Alberta. And now it's about 1.8 million, 1.6 million, somewhere in there. That time it wasn't that big. It's a big city though. I love, man, my mom and dad. Like, I just love them. And my mom passed in 2015. But she played such an important part in my life. My dad played an important part in my life in different ways. I've shared lots on, my podcast and interviews how like my dad wasn't always there, but I knew he loved me because he worked so hard for our family. My family struggled. And so many of us, I think, who are doing this work now, who are speaking to men, came from backgrounds where maybe our families didn't have the wealth, the financial means, and they struggled a little bit. And we got to see what our families went through, and it inspired us to do more. And so we moved to this small town for financial reasons, more or less, out of the city. And I moved from this big center where I wanted to play football and all these things as a kid growing up to an acreage in the middle of the country, 25 minutes away from the next town, and I did not fit in. And so I think it's grade six. Grade six, halfway through, we moved there. Grade 6 through 10, I struggled making friends. I was made fun of. I was a city kid. You know, but you said people could look at this now. What you don't see is my brothers and I, we joke about Team Satellite is the ears underneath the headphones right now. But when I was a kid, like I got called things like monkey man and all these things, like people made fun of me because I was different. I just was. I came in, I wasn't dressed like them. I didn't have a belt buckle or boots or anything like that. I was a city kid. And so I didn't really belong there. What I did have is athletic ability. And so the only place I found that I belonged was when we started playing volleyball or basketball or street hockey or shinny on the rink because, well, I'm Canadian, eh? So playing shinny ice hockey in the winter. And I started to see a place where I could excel. And I was like, oh, wait a second, I'm better than these guys at this. Like, I'm better than them at this. And I wasn't better than anybody. I wasn't like the smartest kid. I struggled in school. But I found a place where I was like, people were looking at me as an area of strength. And so, I get into university. I end up, making it onto a college team. Got to go there, scholarship, didn't know what I wanted to do. I found myself in college not knowing what I wanted to do. And never really connected with people that weren't on my team. And for me, it was something that you get thrown in the preseason, and all of a sudden there's 14 guys around you have no choice but to be friends with. Honestly, Frank, I look back, if I didn't play sport, I would have no friends in university because I was an introvert. I'm an introvert that works to be extroverted. And I just never really I tried all the things, man, to fit in. Like I came out of I grew up in a Christian home with loving parents. Everybody has their struggles. I'm not going to lie. We had struggles in our family, but that was my background. And I get into this larger center, urban environment. It's all new to me. And I tried everything to fit in, start hitting the clubs, the drinking, whatever have you. And it wasn't me. It never felt comfortable. It never felt me. And this is something still I struggle with as a 42-year-old man, is where do I fit in? Where do I struggle? And I think this is something that, knowing this about myself now, I can look in reflection of my late 20s and why I had no confidence. And people would look at me and be like, dude, look at you, man. You look great. And the only way I could explain it is I looked great, but I felt terrible. I was doing it for other people. I wasn't doing it for myself. I was looking for approval, maybe approval based on what I didn't get when I was a teenager. Maybe it was a little bit of arrogance and ego. Say, hey, look at me now. A lot of the shallow, I hope, look at me now. I hope I bump into so-and-so that I haven't seen in 4 years. Man, I struggle with that. And then I'll circle back to this because it's important. My wife helped me change that perspective of myself. And she showed me that I had a purpose. When I met Kim, I remember my mom said to me, I dated Kim for 8 years before we got married. And Kim would have got married before that, I think. I remember my mom pulling me aside. And my mom said, Cam, okay, it's time. She was mad at me. You either need to marry this girl or you need to let her go. Because this is what I've seen she's done in your life over the last 8 years. And if you can't see it, you're a fool. You need to let her go. Okay, Mom. And, so a year later, Kim and I got married and yeah, man, it's cool. But I think that lack of confidence came from just a series of events in my life where I never really felt like I fit in. And I was always looking for the approval of others.
Yeah, no, I resonate a lot with that. And I think, the vast majority of the audience will kind of know, my story of, being kind of that. So I was the opposite. I was an athlete growing up, but a little bit on the heavier side. I mean, I remember literally having to buy jeans in what back then was called a husky department. You would go into these department stores and there'd be a special place within the store where there were jeans that were made for fat kids or overweight kids. And I remember how that made me feel. It's why can't I wear the regular pants that regular kids wear? Why do I have to wear the jeans that are made for fat kids? And that kind of became my identity back then. It's okay, well, I'm a little bit overweight. I mean, I remember even in high school, it's some of the boys on the baseball team would call me Fat Frank. I wasn't obese. I mean, I was a great athlete. I just carried a little bit of extra weight. And I think it was a lot of just lack of understanding, education around nutrition, and kind of ate within our home. So when I got into fitness and bodybuilding and training around 18, 19 years old, it's that became my identity, right? It's now I have an ability to change and people will now respect me for the way that I look. But just like you, man, I became addicted to the cooler. I became addicted to 6 meals a day. I mean, there was a point in my corporate career where I ate on a clock. I would be on a call with potential clients. And if the clock went off, I'd say, hey, I got another meeting I had to run to right quick. I'm going to call you back. And really the meeting was with me in the microwave.
With your Ziploc container.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but looking back at that, man, obviously I see some destructive tendencies within there, but I also have seen how maybe some of that, I've been able to apply that focus, discipline, work ethic to create good things, both in business and then in other endeavors in my life. So I'm curious with you, looking back at some of this, is there any good for you that has come out of that? And how do you kind of navigate that, right?
Man, it's all good. It's all good. If I am truly committed to grow and I'm truly committed to everything I do is, I know my why, I aim for growth and I take ownership over my journey. And if everything I do is through that lens and that filter, I can look back and maybe in the moment it's a little bit dirty. When my mom got diagnosed with multiple myeloma and bone marrow cancer in 2002 and was given 6 months to live, I could look at that through bitterness and hate, and I could do that. But then I can look at it as my mom passed away in 2015, 13 years later, and got to see marriages and grandkids and vacations to Hawaii and the whole jam. And I can be grateful for what I've experienced because it shaped me to who I am today. And I can look at the struggles that I've had as a teenager, the struggles that I've had as a young man, the struggles that I have now as a dad and as a husband, as a friend, as a mentor, as a leader. I can look at all these struggles as a tool that says, hey, I'm going through this so someone else doesn't have to, because I can then speak into their life and just share a little perspective. And hopefully, in some way, I can inspire them, I can impact them and influence, make some type of influence in their life. So, yeah, it's easy for me to say in reverse hindsight 2020 that, yeah, it's all good, but it wasn't good in the time. I'm not going to lie to you. There's lots of ups and downs, a lot of pain, a lot of hurt. But looking back, I can also see there was a purpose here. There's a greater calling here. And if I truly believe that, I can't be bitter. I can't be disappointed in what I've experienced.
Yeah. No, obviously I want to get back to the dad stuff here, but maybe speaking to the younger men out there, right? I mentioned at the beginning, like we have a good percentage of our audience that is younger guys within their 20s, single through life, really trying to find their ways. What advice to those guys? Like, do they do the 6 meals a day? How should they begin to kind of structure their life when the focus is on the development of me and I don't yet have the responsibility of other people?
Yeah. Well, I just mentioned three things that I use as a filter: know your why, aim for growth, take ownership. Like my little motto that I use for myself. And other people can use that, but there is something that you need to know before that. You need to know yourself. You need to know yourself. You need to know what your values are. Like, what are your values? And then what are your priorities? And if your priorities aren't in alignment with what you value, you're going to struggle. So if you're a young man right now, and I think back, yeah, I don't think I'm that old, but if there's a guy 25 listening to this right now, I'm 17 years older than that guy. And I want to use my experience to help encourage you out there right now. If you're struggling, you're listening to Frank's podcast, which, by the way, props on you, because this is the right place to be, is listening to this podcast. If you're struggling right now, know yourself. And if you can't know yourself, if you don't know who you truly are, lean into a mentor, lean into someone you can trust, someone who cares about you, but will also be honest with you. Because honesty, although sometimes it's hard and it hits you in the face, honesty can also help you grow. And there's no growth without pain. Like, you think about the gym, right? We know this. We tear apart muscle and we feel the soreness. And then as our muscle rests and it recovers, it grows and we get stronger, we get bigger, we can see the change. Man, life is the same way. You're going to go through stresses. It's going to tear you apart. There's going to be times where you feel the soreness. It's times where you feel that you're being knocked down and you can't win, or something is just always against you. Just keep going through, because through mentorship, through connection, through belonging, you'll have time to rest and recover. It's going to make you stronger through it. So stick with it. Reach out.
Yeah, no, I love those. I love those three pillars: know your why, aim for growth, take ownership. To a young man or even an older man, I mean, a guy in his 60s could maybe be struggling with, what is my why? What is my purpose at this stage within my life? What are some questions that a guy can ask himself to begin to find out what his why is?
Yeah. What is your ambition? What is my ambition? What do I want to do? Because when you do something, a lot of people say, what do I want to do for work? I don't know who said this, but I love it. It says, work is something you do for other people. Okay. Your calling is something you do for yourself. So what is my ambition? What is my calling? What do I feel that I'm really being called to do? What am I really good at that can impact the lives of others? How can I speak into the lives of others? Because if you look through the lens of servant leadership, like, how can I serve others? You will find more fulfillment in that than you ever will chasing your own quote unquote smart goals. Okay. So right now, if you want to know your why, you need to get clear on first your values and what you prioritize. But know your why. Like, what is my calling? And the why am I doing this? What does it really accomplish? What does it accomplish for me? What impact can I make? What influence will it have? If I got hit by a train tomorrow, will it, maybe a graphic example, but if I get hit by, what legacy am I leaving? When I was 25, I didn't think of the word legacy. I never did. When I turned 40, even younger, when my daughter was born, when my son was born, I started thinking, what legacy am I, like, what impact and influence am I having? So to get clear on your why, you kind of have to go on a self journey. And sometimes in that self journey, a little bit of outside input always helps.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. I love that. I love that quote. Work is what you do for other people. Your passion is what you do. Your purpose is what you do for yourself. That's great. Getting back to the dads, you mentioned these guys come in, it's kind of this dad bod thing. It like starts with the physical, right? And they want to get the bigger biceps. They want to get the six pack abs, maybe lose a little bit of weight. Maybe it's not all about the aesthetics. Maybe it's like, I just want to get a little bit stronger because I want to be able to body slam my 8-year-old on the bed, right? Once a guy begins to take control of his fitness, how is that carrying over into his relationships, into his business, into his service within his community? Like, what's the spillover effect into every area of a guy's life?
And there's something that happens when you take care of yourself physically that you can only explain it once you've done it. And so there's guys like just starting to take care of their health. They're like, oh, this is so hard work. And it's like getting up to go to the gym in the morning. If you're not a I'm not a morning person, but right now I'm working out in the mornings and I trudge out of bed at 4:30 in the morning to get myself into the gym because it's important to me, not because getting to the gym's important to me, but because I know now after 20 years of experience doing this, how I will feel coming out of it and how I will feel and how I feel about myself, how I feel about my body, the self image that I have that, hey, I am healthy, I am strong, I am beautiful, I am worth it, helps me when I get into my first conversation of the day and will lead through all the other conversations today. So whether that's a embrace with my wife when I get back in the morning, whether it's waking up the kids, whether it's a conflict that I face during the day with a team member or somebody that I have to navigate through a leadership conversation, how you take care of yourself physically impacts your spiritual health, your emotional health, your mental health, and your well-being. I work with a lot of guys who are professionals, like high-end professionals doing a lot of successful work, right? These successful guys, and they're like, man, I am just way more productive now that I'm in shape. Now, I'm not in physical shape, but I just feel good. I haven't lost the 20 pounds yet, but I feel much better. I'm more alert at work. I can dive in. I'm more purposeful. Like everything I'm doing is with a purpose. And so if you're clear on your purpose, you're clear on your why, and you know that there is an outcome for this. I'm not just doing it arbitrarily for the beach, because honestly, it may be a good goal for the next 2 weeks, but it's not going to hold you long term. You got to have a purpose and being intentional with that purpose when you take care of yourself physically. And now you start to see the benefits of this happening through different areas of your life and the people you interact with. And people around you will notice a difference too.
Yeah, absolutely. Speak to the importance of, the dad, the father, the provider within the house, really the one that's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
setting the tone for the family to prioritize his health and how that's impacting the kids that are being raised within a home.
Yeah, absolutely. There's research that suggests that even before your child is born, if the father and the mother are engaged in physical activity, they take care of themselves, it will actually transform their DNA. Transforms the genetics so that when you have a child, that child is not predestined, that's the wrong way to say it, but may have an affinity to do that when they grow older. And the most impressionable times of a human being's life are between the age like 0 when they're born and 5 years old. And so we've seen this with research with ADHD. We've seen this with attention and behavior issues. We've seen this with physical ailments. We've seen this with health. Is that when you're around youth, your children, in that period of time, they are watching, they are absorbing, and what you are doing in the home, whether you're eating together, eating the same foods together, you're active together, you're hiking, you're biking, you're doing those things, you are changing the chemical balance in their brain and the neural connections in their brain so that they start to prioritize what's important. And they just know this as not as something, this is just what we do. I remember Braylon when he was 4 years old. We live about 60 minutes from the Rocky Mountains. Beautiful. We hike, we play, we ski, we do all the things there. And I remember downstairs in the basement, he was just angry that day. He was not listening to his mom. I got home from work and I was like, buddy, what's happening? He said, we need to go on an adventure. He shouted it at me. Like, what do you mean go on an adventure? We need to go to the mountains. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we do, man. All right, we'll go. And you start to see how, even in kids and how the human body develops, how just that time outdoors and being active together as a family sets that tone. Well, who sets the tone? The dad, the mom set the tone. And I think, honestly, there's nothing against moms. Like, moms, listen to this. You're super important. But I think as a dad, we have a responsibility. We have a unique role in the home to be the one that sets an example. And let's go back to that word of legacy, right? Leaving a legacy of this is what's important.
God, that's amazing, man. It's like it becomes the standard at which this is just what our family does. I'm sure you've experienced this now. You mentioned 20 plus years kind of in the gym and in fitness. It's like you probably almost feel like training is almost like breathing, right? It's like it literally is a part of the day. And like if you don't do it, you're like, something's off today. Oh, I so many calls, I didn't get a chance to go to the gym. Like, so that's amazing. And it's like ingraining that in from such a young age. It's like you're teaching all just the positive and productive and valuable habits. You mentioned that it wasn't until you met Mark that you really learned how to eat and fuel your body. What were some of the things that Mark taught you that you've now applied into the Fight the Dad Bod coaching?
Yeah, the biggest thing Mark taught me was blood sugar stabilization, how our body, when it's in homeostasis and our blood sugar is stabilized, how we're accessing stored fat as energy and we're building lean muscle. And it was as simple as that. And I was like, okay, tell me more about this blood sugar stabilization. And Mark had written a book, it's a New York Times bestseller called Body Confidence. And then he wrote another one called How Kids Make You Fat and How to Get Your Body Back, which my wife and I helped do a launch here in Canada. And actually the practices that Mark laid out in that book, How Kids Make You Fat and How to Get Your Body Back, are the exact same ones that he outlined for me. And so, blood sugar stabilization, he says PFC every 3. So proteins, fats, carbohydrates every 3 to 4 hours. Yeah, people are like, oh, the 5 to 6 meal a day thing again. Well, the science suggests that when you do that, your blood sugar levels are stable. And different people have different goals. And there's people out there who are following different programs, plans. I don't like the word diet because I think the diet comes from the word deprivation in my head. You like depriving yourself of what your body needs. But you just taught me how to fuel my body in an efficient way, a way that worked for me and worked for my family, because I can sit at the table and have dinner together and everyone at the table is eating the same thing. Everyone. Proteins, fats, carbohydrates, balanced in the right balance so that we have stable blood sugar and so that I know that my body's accessing stored fat as energy and building lean muscle. And you think about an infant, when an infant is born, I think about my kids and, they feed on breast milk or formula every 2 to 3 hours. And man, it's every 2 to 3 hours, right? And so you're there to support, but mom's breastfeeding or giving formula. Well, if you think about that, it's a balance of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, right? Every 2 to 3 hours, the human body, that's what it performs on. And so when you find for yourself, whether is it 2 hours, is it 2.5, is it 4 hours that my body is, because everybody's metabolism is different. But you start to find out, hey, where do I feel my best? When is my body in balance? And that's what Mark taught me. And that's what transformed my life, got me I would say, lifelong results, and transformed not only my relationship with food, but my lifestyle. It provided a lifestyle opportunity for me that I could set a standard and a model for my kids. I could model for other men. And that I know that gives us the energy and the ability to do all the things that we love to do together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Body Confidence and How Kids Make You Fat and How to Get Your Body Back. Those are the 2 books that you mentioned,
The 2
Mark.
books that
Mark wrote. Guys, we'll make sure to get those plugged down in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be down in the description box there below. Speak to how your training has changed, from, being a collegiate athlete. I'm sure it's, maybe 2-a-days, you're maybe hitting the weights in the morning and then you have the physical practice in the afternoon. How has it been different for you now with the family, with the businesses, with everything you're doing? I'm assuming you just don't have the time to train at the level that you did back then.
And my body doesn't respond like it used to. When I was in my 20s, I could train every day of the week if I wanted to and separate the body groups and do that and make sure I'm not overtraining, but giving proper rest time and on days, off days. You have it. Like my body responded so quickly when I was in my 20s, like 22 to 30. I got the strongest that I probably ever had been. I joke that I didn't have dad strength yet. Dad strength's a whole new level. But my body just responded really well. Everybody's like, oh, I remember turning 30, and everybody's like, oh, you're 30 now. Man, 30 was nothing. Like I was feeling awesome at 30. I was feeling awesome at 35. Around 38, started to slow down a bit. I realized my body wouldn't respond like it did. I couldn't do 5 days a week. Now as a 42-year-old, I train like full body 3 days a week. I'm in the pool 2 days a week. I'm riding my bike with the kids. I ski on Sundays. We play soccer. I play men's league basketball. Like you start to realize how fitness can fit into your lifestyle. It doesn't have to be, you mentioned time. Okay. Can I address a lot of guys will say, I don't have the time. Well, you have the time for what you prioritize. And so if you aren't prioritizing it, you're not going to have the time. But if it's a priority, you will create the time in your schedule, daily schedule, weekly schedule, to make it work. So that's why this guy you're speaking to right now, I hated getting up in the morning. I remember being in college, university, scheduling classes that started before 11 a.m. Like I've never been a morning guy. And it's this mindset, like I'm not that person. Well, now I am because I had to create the time. And now it's like nothing for me to get up at 4:30 in the morning. Now I go to bed early. Like I used to be a night owl. Man, I'm in bed early now, 9 o'clock, 9:30. But what else am I doing after 9 o'clock, 9:30 that matters, right? If I prioritize my workout, I know that's when I need to get it in. So yeah, your schedule will change. as you go through the different stages, but your body changes too. And here's the thing though, your body will change, but your nutritional practices can stay the same. You can still get the same results. It's just your body's metabolism will respond differently to what you're doing to it, that external stimulus, that load, that pressure that you're putting it under.
Yeah. It's so important for, I think, people, men, to understand how those statements that we say over ourselves is what ultimately shapes our identity, right? There's been many that I've heard you share. I was an introvert. I was never a morning person. I was, I'm not a night owl anymore. It's like every single one of those I am or I am not begins to shape our subconscious identity of how we see ourselves. So if you say I am the person that prioritizes my health because I put it in my calendar, like for me, my workout is in my calendar because you show me your calendar, I'll show you what you prioritize. So for me, 5 days a week, it's in there. Boom. Between, somewhere between 11 and 12 and 2 p.m., like depending upon the day and what I have going on. Like I'm going to take a break, an hour, drive to the gym, get my workout in. So it's important to understand that. What other parts of a guy's life? I mean, we've talked about nutrition, we've talked about training. You briefly touched on sleep for you. What are the other, I think you mentioned there's 5 pillars within your
Yeah.
program. Can you walk us through what those
Sleep
5
is
are?
Yeah, sleep is always number one. If you're not getting enough sleep, enough recovery, you're not going to get the results that you want to see.
More
Um,
important than training and nutrition.
more important than training and nutrition. You can train and you can have good nutrition, but if you're not sleeping, like think about your body. Your body metabolizes while you sleep. Your body recovers while you sleep. We know that neural pathways are connected and repaired while you sleep. We know that muscle recovers while you sleep. If you're not getting enough, you will not get the most out of your workouts. You will not get the most out of your metabolism, how your body is using food as fuel. It will impact everything. So I always we start with sleep, have guys track their sleep. We get the ideal number hour. Everybody's different. Like we think about sleep cycles and, typically a full sleep cycle, the average would be 90 minutes. It's not exactly 90 minutes. You can't set your clock to it. But somebody might say, well, I slept 7.5 hours and I feel way off, but I slept 7 hours and 15 minutes. I feel fantastic. Well, you think 15 minutes in a 90-minute cycle is like, are you in REM sleep or are you not? So sleep is always number one. Then we talk about nutrition because you can't outwork a bad nutrition program or protocols, and then exercise. And then we talk about water. Water intake is huge. I drink water all the time. And then vitamins and minerals. Like, are you getting what you need from the foods that you eat? And if you're not, we can talk about supplementation. But those are the 5 things we dive into.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I want to dive into sleep here a little bit. And for the water piece, guys, if you haven't, make sure to go check out the episode 2 episodes ago with Mario Brainovich from Analima talking about structured water. I don't know if you've into this structured water thing. Amazing what the work that they're doing over there at Analima. But talk about sleep. What are some small practice? One thing we like to do here, right, is obviously we share the stories. We kind of get the highlight. We kind of go back and forth here. But when we can find something that we can really kind of zero in on, it's like, okay, let's go there and let's kind of give some actionable tips. What are some strategies and tactics that a guy can begin to optimize environment, timing, all of these things? Walk us through an optimized sleep protocol.
Love it. You just mentioned 2 of them. First, environment and timing. Let's talk about timing. As hard as it is to do, you mentioned in your calendar, what you calendar is what you prioritize. I think you and I have a mutual connection, Craig Ballantyne. And so Craig always used to say, set your reverse alarms. And so you want to be able to go to the evening, go to bed at the same time every day, wake up at the same time every day, the best that you can. And I mean every day. People are like, oh, it's Saturday, I like to sleep in. No, get your butt out of bed, program your body. Just think about how much more productive you're going to be, how much better you're going to feel if you don't oversleep, because you can oversleep. So go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. Make that an aim. And if it can't be exactly the same time, aim for a half-hour window where you have some consistency. So timing is key. Environment is one of the things that I really struggled with a long time is being on my device. And it wasn't like scrolling TikTok or Reels or whatever, which a lot of people are doing now. It was watching videos. I love YouTube videos. I love videos like the ones that you put out on YouTube. And I just love to learn from people, but I would get sucked in and I would watch 30, 40-minute YouTube video, but that blue light from the phone impacts your brain and you don't get sleep that you need. So turn off the device an hour before bed, read a book instead, or even better yet, if you have a significant other, how about you just sit down, talk to each other, connect, and finish your day that way by being present? Because when you're present with others, you feel that they're being present with you. And so, dark environment, quiet environment, No devices, no blue light, read before bed. These are all things that can help you improve your sleep. And back to the water piece, if you hydrate during the day, it will actually help you sleep better. Guys will be, I have to get up at night and go to the washroom all the time. Well, don't drink a liter of water right before bed. Taper off your water maybe later on the day, but the more your body's hydrated, the better you're going to sleep too. So, yeah, those are just some of the quick tips that I would recommend for guys right now if you're struggling with sleep to do those things.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Speaking to the wife kind of partner, spouse there, how important is it to get her on board? And what are some things that a guy can do if maybe the wife is a little bit resistant? Hey, like I'm kind of enjoying what we've been doing over here. Like, I mean, do you have any tips there?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because sometimes you will get pushback. Why are you doing this? Well, or a guy will try a new plan, right? I'm going to do this plan. I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to have more energy. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to sleep more often. And this is what I want to implement. And the wife's like, okay, honey, I love you. Yeah, I support you. But in her head, she's like, yeah, I've seen you do this before. This will last 3.5 weeks and then we'll be back to normal. And so that's why I actually think an external mentor or coach is really important because your family members and the people closest to you care about you too much to be honest with you all the time. And sometimes, like, the best feedback you can get is the hardest feedback to get. So, with the wife, I think if you set a standard and you're clear on the purpose, you're clear on the why you're doing it. You can't say, yeah, I want to lose 20 pounds. So I'm going to do these 5 things in the next 2 weeks. You say, you know what? I just feel like I'm not as present as I want to be with you. I feel that I don't have the energy to do the things that we want to do at the end of the day. I feel that my body, I don't feel attracted. And I want you to be attracted to me. I want us to have more intimacy together. Like, these are the things that I've been thinking about the last little while. And so I've decided to make some changes. And so the changes that I'm going to try is I'm going to try to go into bed at the same time every day. I want to spend more time with you the last hour before I fall asleep. And I want to be able to take care of my body so I can be more healthy and aware and in alignment with the intimacy piece. I want to feel attracted to you. And so here's the things I'm going to do. Like, if you filter it through that and you filter your conversation through the why, what's she going to say? She's going to be like, oh, he loves me so much. Look at what he said. But really, she'll be like, okay. And you are more likely to get supported through that than if you didn't. I'm going to give another example because there'll be young guys who are listening to this too, who aren't married or maybe single dudes. And they'll be like, okay, Cam, I want to do this. I'm going to try this. I've worked with young single guys too, but it's like, okay, I'll do the PFC every 3 and I'm going to cut out coffee and alcohol for 7 days just to give my body a break, right? And they'll go head to a social gathering. And instead, and their buddies like, oh yeah, you're not drinking tonight or what? No coffee in the morning around the cooler at work type thing. Instead of saying, well, I'm not doing that right now, where it sounds like something's being done to you. Well, my coach told me I can't do this right now. Or I'm not doing that right now. You need to say, yeah, I've chosen not to do that. I have this goal. This is why I'm doing it. And your friends will be like, oh, okay, cool. Good on you. And if they're good friends, man, they'll support you. They'll even hold you accountable. So on Friday, when you get to the weekend and you're like, you pick up that beer, or that drink or that cocktail, whatever, like, hey, hold up. You told me on Thursday night that this is what you were doing. And they'll hold you accountable to that. That's a really important piece. So lead with the why, lead with the purpose. That permeates through everything that I would teach, no matter in the different areas that I'm working with people. But if you lead with that, you'll get more support.
No, I love that you touched on the friends there and the relationship thing. I mean, I'll talk a lot about, really what was the genesis of a lot of the transformation for me was the influence and the people that, I was very fortunate to not surround myself with because I didn't intentionally do it. It was by the grace of God. It's like I joined Vince's mastermind and the byproduct of that was getting connected with guys like Craig, guys like yourself. And then here locally, Dan Long, Mike Westerdahl, Chris Wilson, all guys we've had on the show really transformed me because they saw more in me than I saw within myself. And if your friends are going to go against you improving yourself, you might want to look at getting some new friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. Surround yourself with quality people that you aspire to be. Maybe not be exactly like them, but you aspire to be similar to them. People that you see in a mentorship role, and put yourself in a situation where you aren't the smartest person in the room or the most successful person in the room, but you're also not the tail end of the room. Like, there are people that you can serve as well, because we all have value. We all have an experience. We all have a perspective that is valuable in some type of conversation. So you can walk into a room. I'm part of a mastermind right now. There's 150 something dudes in it. And super successful business guys. And up until about 2 months ago, I was the only Canadian guy. So I'd walk into this mastermind group and I'd be like, wow, look at all these men who've done all these things, but they're just men who have done things. That's all. But they're human beings who have perspective and have experiences. And what I found is that maybe at first I had this little imposter syndrome that goes back to me not feeling like I belong, right? Like I shared in a human conversation with them, like speaking into lives of guys because I have a background in health or a background in leadership development and a background in communication strategies. They're like, whoa, like I never thought about that before. And I can walk out of there being like, man, I've learned a lot, but I can also be happy that I've been able to contribute to. So surround yourself with people that are going to impact your life, mentorship, but that you are also able to make an impact and influence others.
Yeah, we had Ryan Mickler on from Order of Men, and one thing he said for all men, whether or not you are a biological father, you should take on the fathering type of role. Whether it's mentoring a guy that's maybe a few steps behind you in business and fitness and relationships, or taking on a big brother role, or coaching a little league team. That was something I decided to do 18 months ago. Is I coached my nephew's little league team, and like it felt so good to be out there with the boys, and now I can walk through a supermarket and I'll hear Coach Frank from like down the hall, like down the aisle, and it's like one of the kids that was on my team. Like, so incredible. I think all men need mentorship, but also need to be mentoring, because you do have something to offer to others, and God, it feels so good when you can serve.
Yeah, service is such an important part. That's why we're here. We're here to serve others. We're here to, be Christ-like and show others through what we do. And service is part of that. And I think, unfortunately, over the last, I would say 5 years specifically, people have perverted service as into business, where it's like, I'm not going to give you my service unless you pay me. But there are times in your life where you're going to be face to face with somebody who just needs you. And you might know it, not know it. It might be on an airplane. It might be at the Little League game. It might be at the supermarket, or a one-to-one coaching relationship where somebody needs you and they just need you to be present. They need you to speak into their life and you to be honest with them and care about them. So no, I love it, man. Service is huge.
No, that's amazing. It's amazing. Take a slight pivot here. We've been talking a lot about the fighting the dad bod, the coaching, all that kind of things that you're doing. I know you've been doing that since 2017, 2018 is
Yeah,
when you
2015 is 2017
okay,
in there.
so
Yeah.
it's 15 to 17. But more recently, you launched a podcast and then a mastermind called Dad's Making a Difference. Talk to us about the origin story behind that.
Okay. Well, I got to go back to like fight the dabble in those conversations I was having with guys, and I saw they were struggling in these different areas. And I was like, well, why are guys struggling with it? It's like, what do guys need? And I'm not a counselor and I have no interest in like counseling people. But I think conversations can sometimes be therapeutic. And so I was finding in coaching conversations, guys needed more than just fitness nutrition. Like it was bringing them in, but they needed more. Simultaneously, I joined this mastermind that I'm part of called ISI, and I joined it in 2000 and tail end of 2020, just after I was allowed to cross the border again. And so what I saw in that, and what I saw modeled by these guys who are super successful, is that they would come together like a band of brothers who would speak into the lives of other guys who came as go-givers, who came to give, not take. And I was like, well, guys need more. And then I started to connect with other men in the space I was in, guys who had maybe a business that was oriented to serving fathers, to like their client, we call it, say their ideal client avatar would be the father of two who does XYZ, right? And maybe they were bloggers, they were podcast hosts, they had TV shows, they had businesses, and they were doing this. And I was like, man, these guys are all making a difference, but they're not really connected together. We need to create a space where these guys connect together. And because together we will reach more men than we will ever reach on our own. And so that's where the idea for Dads Making a Difference first came from. And I started like bringing these types of guys on the podcast. And then over the last, I'll be honest with you, right now, I'm struggling with this right now because I'm seeing a need in the space. And I just had a great conversation with Larry Hagner, who has the Dad Edge. I just had a great conversation. Yeah. And I had Larry on the Dads Making a Difference podcast just a few weeks ago. And I see what he did. And I'm like, man, I would aspire to do that. I'm like, but is that who I'm called to be? Am I called to impact the lives of those guys? Because we are most powerfully positioned to serve the people we once were. And so right now, I'm looking at the Dads Making a Difference, and I ran a beta group, and it was amazing. And these guys are coaches who coach dads and stuff. I'm like, but is this who it's for? Or is it about guys who just want to be better dads? Guys who want to grow. And I say this in the DMD, is like, we want you to grow in 6 areas. spiritually, physically, intellectually, financially, professionally, and personally. And physically, and personally. So we have these 6 pillars. All our conversations will circle on that. And if that is our filter, we can talk about anything else, but we can come back to challenge each other to grow so that we can be more present with our kids, live a fit, healthy, fulfilled life with our families, but also make an impact in the lives of others. I do one-on-one coaching through that, business coaching, leadership coaching through a brand, impact to influence, because I think we can take our impact to influence others so that that influence spreads. Man, I'm on this mission myself. I have an ambition of making a difference in the life of at least one person a week. I don't know if I ever will. It could be this podcast that somebody that we never meet, Frank, could see this and it can make a difference in their life. That's enough. Like if Fight the Dad Bod was to serve the one guy who lost 80 pounds and like completely, transformed his life, then that was enough. Like, so I just saw this need. I saw this need for community, this need for connection. We're coming out of a 2-year period where we are in isolation and men were searching and men were struggling and facing these, like, I'm going to be honest, facing these stigmas of, there's a lot of guys with like the grow a pair, be a man, get out there and that type of stuff, masculinity, which there's a place for that. And some guys like that. But there's other ones where guys like, that's not really my jam. I just want to be better. I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better husband. I want to kick butt in my job and my profession, in my business. I want to expand my calling, and I want to expand my impact so I can do what I'm called to do, what I think God has me called to do. So right now, that's where Dad's Making a Difference came from.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And I appreciate the vulnerability there. That hey, I'm kind of been struggling and kind of figuring out what direction I'm going. I think sometimes we bring these guests on in the audience and people hear this, and it's like these guys got everything figured out. It's like I've been going through a lot of kind of transitional things as well. Like where am I going to kind of go? What direction am I going to take this thing? It's like we're all just kind of navigating a lot of the same things that the audience is as well. And I think it's important to share that bit. But I also think it's important to understand that like we all have a voice, and our voice, it may be for one person, it may be for 1 million, it may be for 1 billion. But if it does impact and change one person's life, then you're doing good. And you never know, that one person may become the one that impacts 1 billion. And I think that is really what helped me in the beginning, years of this podcast when numbers were a little bit low. It's like, all I need is one person to hear this message, one person to hear each episode and begin to take action, begin to take change. And obviously we've grown and we've seen tremendous success, and obviously, really feel like we're having a major impact in what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to see the traction that you're getting right now and the movement that's being created. And man, I love following along.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. Cam, this has been amazing, man. I appreciate everything that you've shared here today. Tell us where guys can find you if they're interested in the Fight the Dad Bod. Where can they listen to podcasts? What's kind of on deck for you guys this year? We'll drive the conversation home with our last and final question here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Fight the Dad Bod, easy way to connect with me, fightthedadbod.com, or message me on Instagram, Facebook at Fight the Dad Bod. It's me. I think that's an important part, is that messaging piece is me. And so you're not going to get a team member through that. You're going to get me. And so I'd love to connect with you, even if you just need somebody to connect with, right? And have a couple questions, that's fine. So Fight the Dad Bod. And then Dad's Making a Difference. The Dad's Making a Difference podcast, it's everywhere. Just search Dad's Making a Difference podcast. It's on every podcast platform you can think of. It's on YouTube. You can watch all our episodes and interviews there. And dmdmastermind.com is where you can find out more information about the DMD Mastermind.
Incredible, guys. And yeah, we'll get all that plugged down. Make sure to check out Cam's podcast. He's had many of the same guests. He mentioned Larry and a handful of others. Josh, I know you've had Josh Cachadorian on there as well. So we got all that stuff plugged down there in the show notes below. Cam, brother, we like to end every episode here with the same question. Obviously, the title of the show is called The Superhuman Life. For me, when I talk about living a superhuman life, it's a belief system. It's the way that I try to show up in the world every single day. And it's coming from the place, as a man of faith, I do think that there's a purpose and calling on every single one of our lives. Like God placed you on this earth at this time for a reason. But knowing and accepting that, in my opinion, is not enough. We must be very intentional about our growth, about our delivery, and about our service to helping other people. And that's how I kind of define living a superhuman life. But Mr. Cam Hall, how would you define living a superhuman life?
I think living a superhuman life, and I'll challenge myself on this as I'm challenging the guys who are listening, as a superhuman life is a life where you can go beyond the borders you've set for yourself, which means, am I doing what I can do just because I can do it? Or am I doing what I'm meant to be doing? Am I fulfilling a calling? Is the work that I'm doing for other people? Am I doing something for other people that has a greater purpose? And I challenge myself with that every day. I pray every morning, please let my steps today, my actions today, my conversations today, put forth your purpose and show you through me, and let me fulfill my calling. Guide me to that. So superhuman life, don't be bound by the borders of what you set for yourself, but expand beyond those and make an impact in the lives of others.
God, that's beautiful, brother. Cam, this has been an incredible conversation. Guys, check out Cam's stuff, download the podcast. And if you're getting value out of this, guys, we ask you every single week here, right? We've really talked about this growth that we've seen over the last couple of months. And it's all because of you guys. It's all because you're listening, because you're sharing this, and because you're leaving those 5-star rating and written reviews. So if you haven't taken the time yet to do that, please drop us a rating and written review. And more importantly, if there's a guy in your life, maybe he's a father that's kind of struggling with finding his identity in this world, or maybe it is that young man that aspires to be that incredible father one day. He needs to hear this conversation. Do us a favor and do him the blessing by sharing today's conversation with Cam Hall with him. But as we end up here today, guys, we love you, and we'll see you next week.